And a very warm welcome to our 139th Security Thought Leadership webinar. And originally we were here every Tuesday and Thursday. Now that we're coming out the other end of the COVID, we're going to be here every Thursday afternoon at this time, every Thursday afternoon at least. And the idea of thought leadership is that we examine a topic today, we critique it in order that we may get ideas about how we can have a better type of provision tomorrow. And in front of you on the screen are all the topics that are coming up. But today we have something that I think is of particular interest to people working in a very diverse range of security areas. The topic today is all about effective incident reporting. Is it the missing gem in the good security toolbox? After all, it all starts with an incident. And logically, the way that it's treated initially has important ramifications for what comes next. So what I'm going to do in a minute is I'm going to introduce our two panelists. And once that's done, I'm going to invite each of them to make an opening statement, 3 minutes, and they get to say whatever they want to about the subject area. Now, at the bottom of your screen, you have a chat button where you can talk to one another and a question and answer button. Can I encourage you to ask questions, please, and get your questions in early, and I will endeavour to incorporate your question into the ensuing discussion. But the earlier you get your question in, the easier it is for me to do that. So without further ado, then, let's go and meet our panelists. And first of all the way from Philadelphia in the United States is Jason. Jason, please introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. So I've got about 25 years safety and security experience with multiple companies in the retail and hospitality sector. I completed my risk management master's degree in the University of Leicester quite some time ago. And now I'm the founder of Certa Solutions. Certa Solutions came through by recognizing the need for intelligent risk management reporting software. And that's what I am here for today.
Jason, thank you very much indeed. And from Philadelphia to London, I think. And Darren, can you introduce yourself, please?
Good afternoon, Martin, everybody. Yeah, so Darren Carter, I've been within the security industry for about 24 years, predominantly hospitality. So I'm currently Director of Safety and Security at Edwardian Hotels. Actively participate, Security Institute, ACES, various forms, and CPP and various other things, but happy to be here today. Looking forward to it.
Darren, thank you very much indeed. Right, now having met our panelists, what we're now going to do is we're going to invite them each to make their opening statement, 3 minutes, when they get to say whatever they want to about the subject area. Once they've both done their opening statements, I'll invite you, the audience, to ask questions. In fact, get your questions in early now. Use the question and answer button at the bottom of your screen. Jason, over to you, your opening statement, please.
Thank you. So effective incident reporting is at the gem of security, or in the missing toolbox. So in my opinion, it's the essential component of security, and for not just for security, but for a business to survive and thrive. And that will be recognized and utilized as a tool more going forward in the future. Done correctly, effective incident reporting supports organizational efforts to reduce the loss by identifying root causes. It enhances cost savings, it prevents incidents from occurring, and it also assists the processes of protecting employees and organizational reputation. Effective incident reporting has to move with the times, making use of technology by having factual information on hand in a quick and effective manner. It is essential for people to be prepared for responses, especially more importantly nowadays, because everything is so much quicker. So if they have the information, they can respond appropriately, be that action, or it may be a requirement that they have to respond to a social media post that has gone viral. Also, with insurance premiums and litigation costs always increasing, organizations see the benefit, or will have to see the benefit, of effective reporting to countermeasure that. I would go as far as saying that effective incident reporting is not just the missing gem in the security toolbox, as I said, but the missing gem of organization within the business toolbox. And going forward in that future, the remit of security may change, and that toolbox may review the security structure and how it's placed, and how security organizations or security within an organization will be reviewed. And then there's also the side that not all organizations have security at the ground level. So that may also be impacted with this effective incident reporting.
Jason, thank you very much indeed. Really appreciate that. That's very helpful. So let me now turn to Darren, and people are all starting to start asking questions. Do get your questions in as soon as you can. Question and answer button at the bottom of your screen. I will endeavour to get to you. Darren, your opening statement, please.
Thank you, Martin. And yeah, thanks, Jason, for that. So yeah, absolutely. I do think it is. It's the most formative part of risk management, in my view. It's hugely underestimated, actually, the impact it should have when done effectively. So I'm probably going to deal with today in what I would suggest is probably 3 different levels. So it's very tempting, and there's a bit of a bias towards treating incident reporting as an operator, as the author, as being the effective part of an incident report. And we can talk about the content of that description today. That's what I would call as like a level 1, the operator, the author, the instigator of a report. But I'm going to probably talk about the effectiveness, or the absolutely essential recognition of the management, the interpretation of what is received from that report. So at a level 2, the recognition of its impact, escalation and effectiveness to influence. And when I talk about escalation, we come on to level 3, which then is the absorption of that incident report into the business. So as I said, it's very tempting to talk about the cultural challenges, a lack of training, bringing this down to a ground roots level in terms of about how the composition of a report and what it fails to do. But beyond that, I'd rather think if incident reporting as a function, as a formative tool for business is effective, it needs to be managed effectively, and it needs to be escalated. It needs to influence and inform change and adjustment at an enterprise level within a business, rather than sit within a software management system, a folder, an occurrence book, however it sits within a person's business. It mustn't and cannot sit where it does, and often it sadly does. So how incident reporting manages future risk within the business is where I see this kind of level 2 and influencing the 3rd level of affecting change. So whilst it might be very tempting to sit here today and talk about the failures of frontline ground roots people, it's much more than that, and it can be hugely damaging if not done effectively.
Darren, thank you very much indeed. Okay, look, good start here. I wonder whether I could start off with Simon Cham, actually, has set me on the right track. Because I was going to say to you, okay, what are then the essential elements of a good report? If it's that important, start with you, Jason. If it's that important, highlight for me what makes it good.
Okay, so first and foremost, it's key that the ground roots is effective, and most importantly, the essential elements of a good report is that it gets to the point pretty quickly. It provides clear quality information without bias or opinion, and the reviewer will fully understand the content and take actions based on fact. Now, going beyond that, there are great incident reports, and that will provide follow-up information, recommendations, actions, and also details about those actions and for specific dates and so on. And then you could go a little bit further, and an excellent incident report will provide all of the above, but also it will document other things such as costs. It will involve third parties. It will have tracking, and it will identify the status of updates and recommendations without, in fact, being in a notification process, as opposed to, as I saw a couple of comments there, a lot of incident reports are just on spreadsheets or just listed on the background, and they're never opened or utilized again. So that's what I would see as the key areas. Darren, you agree?
Yes, in part, yes, I do. I mean, there does come with that a lot of person qualifiers. Okay, so we're talking about the capability. This is what I'm talking about, this level 1 thing. So competency levels, training. What makes a good report is its accuracy, its factuality, how legible it is, using brevity as well. I mean, details in a lot of schools of thought there's a suggestion that reports should contain detail, a lot of detail. A lot of it is often superfluous. It's irrelevant. It just blinds people to the obvious, and it misses out fact. But so I feel, yeah, there's a lot of emphasis put on the expediency as well of an incident report. And to me, there should be some delineation here between what is an incident alert and an incident report. Now, an alert, obviously, by its nature, should be something which notifies somebody at short notice. There should be some expediency. An incident report should have a lot more functionality to that. It must contain factual information and actionable information that's going to inform senior management, insurers, industry, whatever it might be. So there should be some less emphasis on this immediacy to get reports sent up the line kind of thing, because that's often where we find failure in the demand, the speed at which people need information. That's different to an alert.
Okay, interesting point. Well, look, we're going to come back to this, but I thought that was a good context setting answers you to. Let me come to Mike Cummings from the United States. Mike's a former panelist, by the way. And he says, both of you talk about the importance of taking an organizational approach, an enterprise approach. Depending on the vertical market, and his background is in healthcare, how important is it to not have the systems siloed to get a broader approach? And how do we get past the turf issues that keep them separate? Now, it's an interesting point, because when I was doing some research for this, in fact, one of the questions I've got in advance from someone who can't make the webinar is this point about the whole organizational approach, and about you've both mentioned about it being able to be reviewed in the right places. Theoretically perfect, Jason. In practice, extremely problematic.
With conventional methods, yes. However, technology is changing. The way technology is going, machine learning is going, that's going to change, and it will eliminate or greatly reduce the human element of reporting. So it will eliminate those poorly structured reports. It will eliminate the opinions, the bias, and it will also provide accurate information in a timely manner. And that's critical. I understand what Darren said in relation to it is very important to get accurate information, and everybody's under pressure and there's that urgency for that to be achieved. However, the way technology is going, that can be achieved, and something that takes a person 45 minutes can now be done in 5 minutes and with greater results.
Yeah, I mean, just very quickly on that, before I come to Darren with the same question from Mike Cummings. Jason, we talk about technology as if it's an unqualified good, but I guess for people who have to invest in this, there are concerns about investing in the right technologies, and whether they go out of date, and the compatibility and the maintenance costs and the et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
Technology is not an unqualified good in this area, as it isn't in any area. But I mean, are there specific concerns that people have about technology in terms of the way it manages an incident? I mean, you still got to get the right information in there.
Yes, and that's why I said about machine learning. So from that perspective, there's technology out there that is taking a scientific approach to it. So there's a limited number of answers to every single question that can produce a particular report. So if those answers are already provided and based on the questions that have already been answered prior to that, then it's limited in what it's providing. And it's also eliminating what's not required. So it's giving that concise information.
Yeah, okay. Darren, let me come to you. So Mike Cummings' questions is about silos and the difficulty of making this work in practice, Darren.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, depending on which vertical you're in, every business vertical there needs to be some formality and structure around incident reporting. Now, I appreciate the commentary around turf wars, but I think it's important for a business to manage that kind of stress out of a business when it comes to the demands placed upon accurate incident reporting, timely, whatever narrative you want to put around it. a business can't sustain itself as a forward-thinking company with challenges around turf wars when it comes to managing incidents and how they're informing business. You know, big strategic business decisions are formed on the basis of these types of things. So, I mean, it may be corporate balance somewhere to be found in there, but these types of challenges or blockages need to be managed out of the business. And you know, so where they exist, I mean, I'd make it sound easy, but they should not be recognised as a blockage to effective incident report management, however you want to express it.
Very quickly, Darren, do you relate to Mike's question? I mean, do you see that as a major problem or not?
Well, not. I do. I've seen its existence. Absolutely, no, I do. But I do think that it comes down to, so if I take hospitality, for example, it doesn't necessarily exist within that because there's a very specific, there are very different demographics of people that are part of this process. From an operations perspective, they are both security and non-security related professionals, but they both follow an informed, structured way in which the incidents, accidents, fires, deaths, however they're reported, there's a very deliberate and formal way around doing it. And there's no existence of or no prospect of any kind of turf. But I can see, I do know it exists in other sectors, if you like. So no, I do recognise where that is, but it's for the business, I guess, just to recognise where that is and manage it.
Okay, let me stick with you, Dan, if you wouldn't mind, because I've got a question from Darren that actually picks up on something you said earlier. He's talking about having electronic reporting systems which integrate with the investigations, security officer touring, dispatching, etc. Now, that seems right to me. And you right at the very beginning were mentioning about the response, the initial response. Is that always how it works, then what Dennis says, or does it need to be like that to be effective? And I'll come to Jason afterwards.
So if I understand that correctly, does it always need to be, the use of software management tooling to be?
Yes, so the idea is that it's all very well an electronic operating reporting system, but surely it needs to integrate with investigations, the security officer response or management, right? The process for dispatching them, you know, the frontline sort of management tool. These need to be integrated for all this to be effective.
Well, I guess yeah, in an ideal world, it could be, should be, I guess, a completely integrated system that is from the ground up, from an incident instigation through to actionable outcomes from it. That does come with some risk attached to that as well. So, for example, some of the systems, and I shan't name any today, some of the practices, the platforms that I have used and use now have, for example, a screening process that goes through like a gateway in terms of receiving an incident report. And this comes down to kind of the level one that I spoke about, where incident reports can be in a fashion completely inaccurate, actually, and they contain opinion, view, and things that are really quite damaging, actually. So it needs to go through some kind of review process to ensure its accuracy and to ensure that it's not littered with sort of an element of profound risk, actually. And it's not through deliberate intent. That's just through a lack of something that enables that, be it training, awareness, some cultural boundary, whatever it might be. So yes, ideally, a well sewn up, well bolted together system, that's a panacea, I guess, of the whole incident management structure, I would say. Yeah.
Okay, so Jason, theoretical ideal, right? I suppose, perhaps you'll confirm it. In practice, is that a reality?
That is a reality. It's becoming more of a reality every day, and not just integration with other systems. The APIs are there available.
API?
That's basically the integration with other different pieces of software. So it might integrate with the HR software, it might integrate with customer lists and so on. So all that will be put together. So that's one important component. And yes, I agree with it completely. But also there's the importance of ensuring that it closes off the incident, and not just closes off the incident for that but prevents future incidents from occurring. And that's where it needs to be actionable, where the recommendations are monitored, and it's ensured that they will be continuously monitored, and there's accountability and tracking, so that that's where the future losses are prevented, and that's the key benefits for such a system.
Yeah, okay. I mean, it's an interest you should raise that, because another question we've got from now Edidurgis Galiunas, and I'm so sorry if I pronounced that incorrect. I expect I have, and my apologies. But you've raised a good question anyway, which actually builds on this, Jason. About the point is that just because an incident's reported as an incident, it doesn't mean to say it's an incident, surely. And so it's this process of review. I'm just interested in this relationship between technology and people, that this process of review and assessment, Jason, strikes me as fundamental for having whatever comes out of this and is used to be meaningful. There's got to be that review, hasn't there?
Yes, well, we're talking about what constitutes an incident for that organization.
Right.
Yeah. So, and that's what it boils down to. And then the organization creates the parameters of what the incidents will be for them, and they determine what that is, and that would be the beginning point. And based on that, then whether it's conventional methods or technology, that will decide where the organization goes with how to achieve their goals.
I mean, do you lose anything by technology taking over? What I'm wondering is, in some cases, Jason, a very subjective assessment.
I don't think you lose anything. I think there's a lot to gain, because up until now, effective incident reporting has been in the remit of security departments or safety departments or risk management departments. But we've got to remember there's so many organizations that do not have that ability on the ground. So there's such an abundance of missing opportunities or identifications of loss and incidents that never see the light of day. And with having an effective incident risk management or intelligent reporting system, the benefits is that it opens up those and it removes the barriers from having it for just those organizations that can afford to have security in place. Okay,
fair enough. Well, let's move on to Darren, if I might. Now, here's an interesting thing, Darren, from Tracy Rogers. And Tracy says, a lot of companies, she says, see incident management as a data collection tool and only act following a significant level of harm occurring. A, do you agree? And B, how do you change the mindset? That's a cop-out, I would have said as well. But Darren?
I don't agree with that at all. I think, well, I mean, some companies may have that view, of course, but all incidents, the data that or information that's gleaned from any incident must and should and can inform how the business operates, either to a larger or lesser degree. I think, whilst I talk about a screening process, I don't mean that things are just forgotten about. I'm talking about in terms of refining its accuracy and removing inaccuracies, because that's at greater risk. But back to that point, I do think that a business should be informed of, make an evaluation of, and build all of its occurrences, if you like, call them an incident, an occurrence, an event, into its forming of policy, of strategy, of resourcing, of predicting future risk, however it might be. So all data is valuable in a sense, in either informing a decision or changing a process, or affecting change for positive risk reduction. So if I understood that correct, then I'm going to say that all data and information is of use, is valuable.
You see, okay, let me take this point then, Darren, and I wonder whether I could develop it a little bit on Tracy's point in your response. We've just done a report on whether fraud should be compulsorily reported to the police, the law enforcement. And what came back for those against it was, look, there's already too much data in the system. No one can cope anymore. And forget worrying about collecting more incidents, more data, more detail, because we can't cope. It's theoretically a good idea, but in practice, use what you've got well first, prove you can do it, and don't collect any more. Now, I'm slightly sort of pushing the point for effect on this, but let me put that point to you, Darren. But yes, potentially it's all, but it's overwhelming us, and there's just too much. So I'll go Darren first, and I'll come to Jason. Darren, is that a fair point?
It is a fair point, but I guess I'm going to be answering on behalf of Jason. I predict because you know, there are some very effective. Or there is some very effective tooling that can kind of do some of that work for us, actually, in terms of you know, not having to react upon minutiae and have to analyze every ounce of information that we receive. And we can't possibly do that, as clever as our brains are. There are some quite sophisticated tooling that can present a version of how that data looks in an actionable format, I should say, put it that way. So, I mean, I guess I'll swiftly hand that over to.
Yeah, I was going to say, presumably, Jason, you would agree with that.
Well, we agree with what point that.
Well, you agree. Well, the point that we're trying to make here is we're overwhelmed with data already. It's too much, and so this is about not investing in collecting more, but just maintaining what you've got. Almost trying to take less or deal with what you less is better. Dealing with less well is better than collecting lots and not dealing with it effectively. And the world's gone the wrong way. It's about collecting more, analysing more, and doing a lot less with it because it's overwhelmed us.
But I don't, well, I do agree with it to a certain degree, but I also see it from a different perspective that, yes, we can do more well with the same resources. For example, there's so much resources put into health and safety. There's so much resources put into fraud by certain companies. But like in the UK, 16.2 billion was the cost of accidents in 2020, while in the US it's 170 billion. And then if you look at fraud, it's between 1.5 and 3.7 trillion dollars per year, and that's a calculation from the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners that 5% of all company revenues on average it goes towards fraud. So something has to be done, because what we're doing now isn't actually or necessarily working to the extent. More data isn't going to change that. What will change it is obtaining that data and using it in a more efficient and effective manner. And that's what it's about, is gaining more from what we're doing without having to add to the resources. So we're utilizing and increasing our productivity.
Okay, and let me stick with you, because if you wouldn't mind, Jason, because Brian McElravy has really helpfully asked a question at this point, because he says instant reporting systems have become very complex. He's almost twisting the issue on its head here, with AI-based systems and other sophisticated forms of analysis. Is there a need for a system that reverts back to the basis of documenting the records of events? In other words, have we got ahead of ourselves here? I'll ask you first, because I'm expecting that you and Darren might come at this slightly separately. Let's find out. Jason, your thoughts first.
So depends on what types of systems are out there. Like there's systems out there now that effectively will do the basics and will create an accurate narrative of the report, so it can be reviewed and read by people. The difference between doing that, presenting the report from that, as opposed to individuals is that it eliminates what we talked about already. It eliminates the errors, it eliminates the judgments calls, and eliminates also the opinions on the other challenges that may exist in a complete human report. Okay,
let me come to Darren. Darren, I'm interested in your take on Brian's question. I mean, in a sense, he's turning the issue on its head, and it's inviting us to say, have the systems got all a bit too complex and a bit too much? And once again, there's a sort of go back to basics here. What's important? And let's get our focus right on that. Reasonable, Darren, or exaggerated?
No, I think there's some truth in that. I think, I like the thought around that, in the sense that it's coming back to my opening statement around it's practically what do we take and absorb from this into the business. Now we can it can arrive at that point of decision making either way. However, there needs to be effective management of that information, the output of that incident report, whether it's written on a shoddy piece of paper with limited but factual relevant information on it, or whether it's come through a cleansed process, a very refined process, and it sits within, it's been analyzed, however that happens, reverting back to my suggestion around the management, the absorption of that incident report into the business and what impact it has for change, what impact it has in recognizing future risk. I do agree in some sense, largely with that. And yes, a business can only deal with so much data. And this isn't one area that a business is tapped into every day. Businesses are compelled to tap into so much, away from its core purpose of life. This is just one small element of it. So, we don't own that space in the thinking space of, our senior leadership teams. So, I do agree with that point.
Okay, thank you. Jason, just let me ask you to follow up on this, because while we've got you here, Brian does mention the point about AI-based systems, and we've been hearing a lot about this. For those of us who are not experts in AI, in your area, is this transforming incident management?
Yes, and just one point before that is that many of these systems now begin with the basics. So if you don't get the basics right, there's no foundation for expanding, and you don't have the relevant information that's collected that's going to be there for those management decisions to be made. So I think that's the key aspect of that. With AI systems and intelligent incident reporting solutions, they create a vast amount of data, but the great thing about that is that every organization can decide what they want to take from that. They don't have to use all that data. It's not, if they're at a level and they say, well, we only want to know about the effects of, if it's a certain level of risk, that's all we want to know about, or that's where we want to allocate our resources. But it gives them those opportunities to make decisions based on fact, as opposed to other systems. The solutions aren't there because the information, once it's completed, it doesn't go any further. So this, like analyzing all this data, could be over a period of a year or 10 years, and it will say, okay, so these incidents are still occurring 10 years later. So, and that's a big red flag and alert. So something can be done with it. So they're the key benefits of it. So if you eliminate that type of incident from occurring, then you have more resources and you start working down the pecking order to start eliminating additional incidents that occur.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you should say that, actually, because Jody Reed is thinking along similar lines. Because just making the points that there are different types of reports, presumably. There are some that are just statistical and others which have extensive detail. And presumably the organization decides what it needs and what it can manage and how it can use. In an ideal world, the type of reflects what's been defined by some process as being necessary.
Yes, most definitely. And that's the difference between what has been out there in the past. And that's why I suppose to reiterate the point that the benefits are immense. There is so much information, there's so much data that's out there, but we now have the resources to process that and filter it and decide what is actually important to that organization.
Okay, Darren, just very quickly on this point, Jody's point. I mean, reports, do they vary markedly in your experience between organizations in terms of what they use and how they use them?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so
Darren, just on this, given that, what's the key criteria or the key reason why some use it more than others? I mean, is it about risk? Is it about resources? Is it about attitudes to the importance of incident? I mean, I'm just trying to think through the key difference then.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. Yes, it is very much dependent upon the business type. Excuse me, sorry. It is very much dependent upon the type of business. It's appetite for risk, I guess. It's appetite for the inclusion of an expert opinion of you into the board. But there's a business, every business, I guess, needs to start out in understanding where it manages its risk. Okay, so what is it going to treat as an incident? Whether this is something which, at a basic level, is something which creates, loss, or has got the capacity to create loss, damage, harm to reputation, increase insurance premiums, whatever it might be. That they need to have a tangible grasp on what the business, and an honest view of what the business sees as a risk in terms of informing its incident reporting structure. Because inevitably, if that doesn't exist, then you do end up with kind of a completely ill-informed structure around even reckless, I would say, at some point, approach to managing a much more wider risk in the business.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, Darren? Because I was actually having a conversation with the finance sector when we were doing this report on whether fraud reporting should be made mandatory. And in the finance sector, there's a requirement to submit suspicious activity reports. And so because there's a requirement, everyone submits them. And the real point about doing this is to tick a box to say that you've done it, because the regulatory breach is the serious thing, somewhat losing its function over time, some argues, you know, that now we're about obeying regulations rather than collecting good data. And maybe this comes back to your point about culture and about everyone buying into the importance of whatever process is in place.
Yeah, I think it is, and we do ourselves in hospitality contribute to the whole SARS reporting theme as well, and it absolutely is. And I know that I can move through the finance industry, and it's quite compelling actually. But yeah, so I mean, coming back to the an appetite for a business to acknowledge the importance of incident reporting and how it applies to its profitability, I think is something which sits obviously at board level, but it needs to be. I might find the insurance sector. So I work very closely with our insurers, for example, and they are fantastic assets of mine, actually, rightly or wrongly. They offer me quite a lot of leverage, and they're an informative part of my day. Actually, in
what way, Darren? In what way?
Well, because they are in the business of reducing risk within my business, actually, because it has an impact on their business. So they are great partners for us, not just in the company that I work now, but in every business I've been in. I've used insurers quite heavily, actually, to bring influence or to provide professional development for myself and understanding risk, its impact. And I mean, I just find that a great toolbox, actually, the insurance industry.
Okay, I'll just come back very quickly to Jason, just before we leave this point. Jason, when I was talking about the regulatory process, it becomes a tick box to make sure you haven't breached it and all that goes with it, rather than collecting good information. I saw you nodding in the background. It does really feed this point, doesn't it, about being clear what the process is and not losing sight of it. And I guess it's easy to do that.
Yes, and I can understand that after a period of time that it may appear that yes, it's ticking the box, but why are we ticking that box in the first place? Because it must have complied with certain parameters that were required for that box to be ticked. So even though you gave the example of suspicious type of behavior, if that's the case, then we're ticking that box for that purpose. So if we don't tick that box, what's the impact on the organization, or what's the impact or the effects of what's going to occur? And that those boxes, so the box ticking, yes, it may seem monotonous, and it may lose what's actually required for, or the requirements of what it's meant to achieve. But somewhere along the line, that data is being looked at by someone, and those number of ticks, depending on what type of incident it is going to build up and identify some sort of pattern somewhere, because like that's how trends are created. So
yeah, it does. I can just see standing back, you can say that on a day-to-day basis when you're filling it in, and you're not getting anything back either. It just disappears into, you can feel a little bit, a bit of a burden without much reward. But okay, let me just get a couple more questions very quickly because we're running out of time. Darren, let me come to you first. And Itvika Rasul, very quick, if you wouldn't mind, just makes this point, Darren. I'll let me get you to comment on it. It looks like there is a need for a uniform incident reporting format rather than numerous formats or templates, which certainly confuse the whole matter and affect the risk rating. I guess it's back to this point, Darren, about just trying to get people on board. And so having that sort of format, is that right? Or is it a matter of collecting the right thing in different formats for the right purpose within the same company? Darren, very, very quickly.
Yeah, well, it can't be uniform for industry or across businesses. Absolutely not. But within a business, there absolutely should be a uniformed, structured, formal way of reporting incidents. Absolutely, there should be, because there's no or very a very much reduced risk of just receiving superfluous, irrelevant, chatter type thing, I would call it. Right, so there has to be a formal process within a business.
Just very, very quickly, Jason, you agree?
Absolutely. It needs to be uniform because it creates a baseline across the organization, so it can effectively measure the like for like, as opposed to depending on the person in each location or each area that has conducted that incident report. So the benefits of having something uniform will benefit because it's, as I said, it's apples for apples.
Okay, very quickly, stick with you, if you wouldn't mind, Jason, very quickly, because we're running out of time, but I want to do justice to the questions. Keith Nielsen says, it has always been the case of it's not what you've got, it's what you do with it. How can we try to ensure that reports are acted upon? Very quickly, headline strategic issues for each of you, 20 seconds each, if you wouldn't mind. What are the strategically most important things we have to do to get this taken seriously? Over to you first, Jason, 20 seconds, if you wouldn't mind.
I think, well, first and foremost is highlighting it to the organizations and then realizing what the challenges are. And that's through, it basically comes down to identifying some form of cost benefit analysis, and they see where they can go with it. There, yep. That's it. If they need to invest to effectively save and reduce costs.
Okay, fair enough. Darren, highlights from you, please. Strategic issues most important.
I guess this comes down to my level 3 opening, really. How somebody influences informative change in the business is a whole different session, Martin. I know you know that. But where people are struggling with that, then they need to reach out to their peers and come on sessions like this and elsewhere. But that's a whole new or a whole different ball game about how we influence the outcomes of these types of report. And
Darren, and a topic for another day, how we influence change. That maybe we'll do that as a future webinar. Let's give that some thought. Darren and Jason, thank you so much for your time. That was absolutely outstanding. Really, really enjoyed that conversation. Thank you also to the audience for your engaging set of questions. And we did try and get through them all, but there was a lot there. Don't forget, a copy of this webinar will be on the website tomorrow, along with a blog that I will write to go with it. So look on the website tomorrow if you want to follow up, and all the webinars are there to be reviewed. Just a final few comments from me, if you wouldn't mind, just to let you know that entries are still open for the OSPAs in Ireland and New Zealand. You haven't got long though, really. Well, 6th of December and the 14th of Jan, but get them in early, don't leave them to the last minute. If you do, you might find that you leave it too late. So please do recognise Ireland and New Zealand, the OSPAs are open. And also to let you know, book your place at these award ceremonies. Australia is the 27th of October. It's virtual and it's free. The 11th of November, the Norwegian OSPAs, it's virtual and it's free. On the 6th of December, the Tackling Economic Crime Awards, it's virtual and it's free. On the 14th of December, the Cyber Oscars, the first ever Cyber Oscars, special award scheme just for cyber, worldwide reaction to that one, virtual again, and it's free. And get a date in the diary if you're here in the UK, at 24th of February, the UK Oscars in London. That's a physical event. And let me tell you this, entries have just closed for the UK Oscars. We've had an astounding response. Any of the websites, by the way, you can find out more about those awards. Finally to say, next week, I'm actually in Madeira next week, so my colleague Janice Goldsborough-White will be responding to aggressive people, the implications for the security sector. 3 experts will be talking about that. The week after that, our financial crimes are low priority. What should we do? You can book yourself into these because Sarah Gray, who is behind the technology today, she's done it all in advance. So thank you very much again to my panelists, Jason and Darren. Thank you very much again to you, the audience, for your questions. Thank you very much indeed in the background to Sarah Gray, her first ever management of a webinar today. And also to Christine Brooks, our event manager, who helps me organise all this. Wherever you are in the world, until we meet again, stay safe.